Coming to you live from the Dune Sea, it's the Movie Change Up Podcast Disney Plus Weekly Review, where each week I, Joe Fricke, and my co-host Tristan Mayer, we break down this week in Disney Plus from releases to news drops, anything related to Disney Plus that came out this week we're going to talk about. We got Book of Boba Fett episode dropped, and we got a couple movies drop, and a little bit of news that we're going to talk about this week, especially related to someone I grew up watching their show and their movies a lot. So it'll be a fun discussion. Tristan, last few weeks have kind of been slow for Disney Plus. We've had some big releases, but no real small or medium-sized releases. How have you been feeling about Disney Plus this week, or these
Yeah,
past few weeks even?
yeah, you mentioned that it's a bit slow, but I'll take it. I'm kind of taking advantage of the slow time here to fill in a little bit of stuff that I didn't get a chance to watch, or maybe watch some drops that are smaller scale that I didn't would never have maybe given the time, And I think it's a chance for us on the show to maybe talk about some more unique stuff. I want to shout out something quickly, and not quite a topic, but something that I watched on there that I think might be worth a plug, And I think it's a because it's a slow week, I was able to watch it, and that is Betty White Goes Wild. Of
Ooh,
course, Betty
giggity.
White recently passed away, and this is an old special, Joe, but it still checks out. It came out a few years ago, and if you do anything about Betty White personally, she was a big fan of animals. She was really active in the animal protection and animal donating to shelters and that kind of a thing. So she's very passionate about animals, and so if you want to see Betty White kind of fangirl about something she loves and make fun Betty White commentary, it's kind of a nature documentary in a way. She's going to all of these zoos and these kind of safari trips and meeting these animals face to face and teaching you about the animals and their kind of behaviors and stuff like that. I had a good time watching it, and yeah, Betty White. You talk about having memories of a TV shows and memories of movies. Betty White has been in my life for so long, and it's a sad loss. But you get to watch this special that just dropped on Disney Plus, obviously in correlation with her passing. And if you want to get some Betty White memories and learn some stuff about lions and tigers and bears,
Oh
I
my.
definitely recommend checking out the Betty White Goes Wild. That was a good one that I got to fill in. But yeah, you mentioned a slow week, so I got a chance to watch something like that, and I'm hoping for the next few weeks, as we're still slow, I'm going to try and plug something smaller like that isn't necessarily a full topic on the show, but something that I think might get be worthy of a shout out while you're looking for something to watch in these slower weeks of Disney Plus.
Well, that's good. That's something I might check out. I was a Betty White fan. Her Snickers commercials were great, and then her appearances back on the game shows back in the day. I never really watched the Golden Girls, so I don't have a touchstone to that. I don't really. When I think of Betty
How
White,
dare you, Joe?
the Golden Girls is not exactly what I go to, but yeah, definitely gonna check that out. Tristan, you ready to move on to our main topic, or do you have anything else you want to touch on?
No, that was my big call out, and yeah, it's a slower week, but I was able to fill in some of the gaps, so I'm not complaining too much.
All right. So our main topic, we have episode 3 of the Book of Boba Fett. This was titled "The Streets of Mos Espa." I'm gonna say a controversial episode based on what I've seen online. An episode I rather enjoyed, and I think you did as well for the most part. Essentially, the plot of this episode is this watermonger played by Stephen Root, who people might know as the voice of Bill Dauterive on King of the Hill. He was also in Oh Brother Where Art Thou. He was in Dodgeball. He was the stapler guy in Office Space. But he's this watermonger that essentially comes to Boba Fett and says, "Hey, these people keep stealing my water. I need you to help with that." And then Boba Fett kind of tries to figure out the situation, and realizes these kids are only stealing the water because he's severely overcharging for the price of water, and so that's kind of their only way to get it because no one could possibly afford this water. So, kind of rectifies. He's like, "Hey, just work for me. You don't have to steal water." And it's Boba Fett grew his army. I thought it was a really smart tactic. When that happened, I'm like, wait, is this whole thing going to be Boba Fett solves the economic crisis of Tatooine? Like, what are we doing here? What's going on? But I kind of like the way it was resolved. Uh, Resulted in a little bit of a speeder chase, which, maybe could have felt a little bit more fast paced, but all things aside, it wasn't that big of a deal to me. This '80s punk kids didn't bother me. I thought they fit Star Wars perfectly. Yeah, we got a flashback scene too. Turns out the Tuscans, not long for this world, got wiped out by the Pikes. Tristan, what were your thoughts on this episode? You're muted.
I was somewhat positive on the episode, not necessarily as much as you. I think the show is somewhat starting to lose my interest a little. I think plot wise, it's not doesn't seem like it has much momentum behind it. I don't necessarily feel like I'm learning much about the characters here, or I'm like gaining any insight into their motives. I feel a little bit like we're 3 episodes in, and I would like a little bit more oomph, a little bit more direction, a little bit more energy to the story here, especially when we knew they were playing so many secrets and hiding so much. And it seems to me maybe they were hiding the fact that nothing happens in the show because we're 3 episodes in and there's been very little progress on anything. But that being said, I the part that was most controversial here was that speeder chase, and I had a great time with it. Honestly, it was one of my favorite things I've done in this whole show so far. I thought the characters were really compelling and crazy and colorful. And I think that turned people off a bit because they think, oh, Tatooine, that has to be like all desert and worn, and I don't necessarily think it has to be. And I think the fact that they brought in these very unique characters with different backgrounds and in a similar way to Luke, where Luke was kind of like this punk kid who lived on Tatooine by himself and was kind of living on the outskirts, not wanting to be like part of necessarily the direct straight society. He was kind of like an outsider, and I think these guys are also outsiders, similar to Luke, but in much different ways. They're kind of like the rebel punks, the biker gang, the car guys of Tatooine who
Yeah.
spend all their credits building up their fancy bikes, and because they have nothing else. They said there's no jobs, there's no this or that. So I bought into the fact that they would have these snazzy speeders and getting a cool chase with it. I thought it was a pretty fun scene, and I think it's pretty telling that the one thing this show did that was unique and interesting among Star Wars things is the one thing that Star Wars fans are deeply hating so far.
Yeah, I thought, I liked the episode a lot. I think it's maybe moving a little bit more than how you feel it's moving, but everyone has their own opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? I'm a stupid person. Um, but yeah, we got the Black Chrysanthemum fight as well, which, I liked. I don't think that's going to be the last we see of old Black Chrysanthemum. I think he's coming back. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, though, is so the twin Hutts show up, who are Jabba's cousins, and they're like, "Hey, you know what, Boba Fett? You can have Tatooine. Turns out someone else laid a claim to it. We don't want it. We're good. Here, in fact, take this Rancor. Have a nice day." Something tells me it ain't just the Pikes, because I have a feeling the Hutts aren't exactly afraid of the Pikes. I feel like they're on equal footing with the Pikes. I'm more and more inclined to believe we're definitely getting Crimson Dawn in this show.
Yeah, I think
Especially,
that's
and
a
one
good
thing,
bet. Yeah.
there was like this little interlude cutscene where they're all aliens, so I don't really know the species, but it was like just like this little thing you see all the time in Star Wars of these little creatures, and you saw this one creature flying and like right above the ground, and this other creature going right about to bite it, and then this bigger creature comes and bites and like basically nabs both of them, kind of tying to the whole Phantom Menace, there's always a bigger fish thing. And I don't think that's exactly just like a coincidence. I feel like it's somewhat of foreshadowing of what's to come, that there is a bigger fish than just the Pikes, and I'm pretty sure it's Crimson Dawn. And if not Crimson Dawn, it's at least another crime syndicate. But with everything of what people have found of the theme of Crimson Dawn is interwoven into the theme of the Book of Boba Fett, I think we're getting Crimson Dawn in this show.
I think that's a good guess. And I know the comic books are canon when they want them to be, and canon when they don't want them to be. It's like picks and choose by the writers, but the Hutts and Crimson Dawn do have some history uh, in the comic books. So I think that it would make sense if they have some level of fear or at least some level of begrudging respect for the
Yeah.
Crimson Dawn. And I think we saw in the show they're not afraid of pulling comic book characters and throwing them in. So maybe they will bring in some storylines and even a throwaway line here or there, something that would bring that together. Not like I need that, but it's always fun when they throw in those little things that make you remember
Yeah.
other stuff.
And even like Black Chrysanthemum and Boba Fett have like worked together and worked against each other in the comics, and like I don't need them on the show to have a full-on discussion of hey, remember that one time when? But like Chrysanthemum and Boba Fett gave each other a little look in the second episode that was kind of like a little head nod from each of them. That it's like okay, these characters clearly have a history. If you haven't read the comics, you kind of get the vibe that they know each other, and if you had read the comics, you're like okay, they're kind of acknowledging that there's that these comics exist.
Yeah, that's exactly the type of nods I like, where the plot holds together perfectly if you don't know there's any history there, but if you do have a history, you have that added level
Yep.
of joy seeing it. But you're not at the same time being like, okay, and then we're going to stop and explain everything that happened between these two characters for no real reason, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing I wanted to bring up with the Rancor is we finally have another Rancor keeper in canon, played by Robert Rodriguez's own cousin, Danny Trejo, who does a lot of work with Robert Rodriguez, and as a big fan of the Machete franchise and the Spy Kids franchise, it's always great to see Danny Trejo popped up. And there was a lot of talk in these moments where Boba Fett was talking about the Rancor, but he was really talking about himself, and same with Danny Trejo as the Rancor keeper, where he was kind of where Boba Fett was talking about the Rancor, where he was gifted the Rancor, and Danny Trejo was like the Rancor imprints on the first person he sees and he protects it. And Boba Fett was like, oh, I thought they were bred for fighting. And if you know Boba Fett's history from the Clone Wars, it's like, okay, technically he's still a clone. He's unaltered, but at the end of the day, all the clones were bred and created for fighting. Just like,
And in the end, I mean, Django probably built his son because he wanted a successor,
yeah,
someone that would take on his mantle. So he
yeah,
was, in a way, bred to be a killer, raised to be a killer,
yeah.
so he's definitely an element there where he's seeing himself in the Rancor, and you guarantee he rides that Rancor, right?
Oh yeah, they don't have the line of like I want to ride this without him riding. Like he's 100% riding it. I'm gonna say even by the end of next episode. And I wanted to say something about with the Danny Trejo casting. It's more than just like oh I like Danny Trejo. He would be a good Rancor. Like if you know his story, fits that scene perfectly. If he's someone who, wasn't the best person in his youth, spent time in prison, and now has like changed his life, and he's kind of become almost like this sweet older grandpa type person. He owns businesses, and he was kind of in the same way of like the Rancor or Boba Fett, where he was this kind of bad, violent person, and now he's calm, chilled out, and a good like contributor to society.
Yeah, I mean, Danny Trejo is a staple of Robert Rodriguez, so I was just waiting for him to show up in this show, and I wondered, like, okay, is it going to be a cameo? Is it going to be like a substantial role? And at least he got some spoken lines, he got to bring home a theme.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if he'll be back for more episodes, but I think you
I
think at
think
least one. He's part of the Rancor plot. It'd be weird if he just didn't show
Yeah,
up
I think
again.
he's gonna be back to like train and help Boba and how to ride it. I'm kind of sad it's not Moochie, but I understand what the story they're trying to tell that why it's not. Maybe we'll get Moochie later on. Maybe we'll have two Rancors, one for Fennec Shan to ride and one for but or maybe the big tease at the end of season 1 if they're like planning on a season 2 of this show is an older Maori actress comes up riding a Rancor, and Boba Fett's like, who are you? And she's like, my name's Omega, and we find out that she's riding Moochie.
That would be a nice twist. And look, here's my prediction, Joe. We're gonna have Boba Fett out there riding around his Rancor, and then middle of he's gonna be going good, of course. He thinks he's hot. He's killing everybody, beating all the criminals, eating them with the Rancor, and then you hear a big roar, and you go, "Oh my God, what's that?" He turns around. It's Amelia Clark riding another Rancor. We get a Rancor fight. Rancor versus Rancor. It's
Nice.
gonna be the showdown of this.
What
Of
if
this
it's
series.
just Amelia Clark as Daenerys Targaryen riding a dragon?
Yeah, she's like Daenerys and just starts burning him.
Yeah,
You're like, it's a crossover.
yeah,
That doesn't
exactly.
even make sense. But I am. That would be a moment where I go on Twitter and maybe get a little mad about Star Wars. If they start
Yeah,
bringing in
I'd
Game of
kind of be
Thrones
with you on that
crossover.
one. I'd be with you on that of like, okay, what the fuck is this? But
Yeah, I'm not usually the person that goes on Twitter and gets mad about Star Wars, but that might push me.
Oh, another thing I wanted to add is we have another something from animation pulled into live action. The mayor's assistant, I can't remember his name, but played by the actor, I think it's David Pasquizzi or something like that. I always remember him as the psychiatrist from Groundhog Day. But in the little speeder chase, obviously, like any good chase scene, ends with him crashing into a, you know, basket of fruit. And this time, the basket of fruit were a thing of Melu runs, which, if you're a fan of Star Wars Rebels, kind of appear sporadically throughout that show.
Oh, I didn't even know that. That's an interesting connection. I'm a big Rebels fan, so it's cool to see that little continuity there.
Yep. All right. Yeah, that's.
And I gotta say, it was cool to see Stephen Root. You mentioned him for a second, but I'm a big fan of him. Great and Barry. He's That's where I kind of recognize him from, and that he's kind of like the mentor of uh, uh, Barry in that show.
Okay. That's a
Bill
show.
Hader's character.
That's a show I've always wanted to watch. I just haven't got around to it. I have a long list of shows I've always wanted to watch and just haven't gotten around. Ted Lasso is next up, but I have to go through the process of signing up for Apple TV, and that just seems like work, even though it'll take a
Yeah,
total of 5 minutes. But
you can sign up for Apple TV and see Stephen Root in Tragedy Macbeth. He also was in Tragedy Macbeth. He's having a big year this year.
yeah,
Star Wars, Tragedy Macbeth, Blade Runner, the TV show, the animated show. He's going to be in that next year. So yeah, he's one of those actors where it's like you see his face and you're like, oh, I know that guy from things, and
yeah,
then you look at his IMDb and you're like, oh, I've seen like half his movies.
yeah,
Who knew?
yeah. Do you have any predictions you want to make for the rest of the season, or maybe even the next episode?
I do have one prediction. I don't know if it's going to be the next episode, but it's something that I think will happen probably in like the finale. And they've been mentioning a lot that Tatooine at one point had water. It's been mentioned in a lot of episodes here, almost every episode, I would think. And when he saw that tree in episode 2, he had a bit of a vision of Kamino and Tatooine and kind of like blending these two, the planet that's all water. He came from this all water planet, and now he's on this completely water free desert wasteland. And I thought that was a good touch. But the more they mention that Tatooine was water and that water is like a scarce resource, particularly for the Tuscans that he's connected to, my wild prediction is that Boba Fett is going to restore water to Tatooine. He's gonna some way or another find like a consistent water source and not open it up to the rich and the elites who control Tatooine, but to everyone. And that's going to be his way of kind of like uniting people in a way of Tatooine. He's saying he thinks he's going to be a crime lord that brings everything together, but I think we might see him kind of restore water to Tatooine, and by the finale, and kind of be a source of life to the people of Tatooine by bringing back the hope of they've had decades of no water, and now he's going to be like, look, I've made water. There's something to believe in here.
Or to go, maybe this would be too dark and too like violent, but I noticed, like as you're saying, I think it's Mos Espa is like inside a crater, right? So what if somehow that crater just fills up with water? Like Mos Espa's gone, or maybe whatever town it is, but the crater is now filled with water.
Yeah, that would be a really dark twist, but I do like it, Joe, and I think the reason that I want this water thing to come true is I think it would be really fun for this show that feels kind of inconsequential now to have like a major consequence on a major Star Wars planet. Like Tatooine, we know is a desert planet for how long, and if he's able to make like a very permanent change to that planet, and that's something that's going to ripple through all of Star Wars forever, and that's something that I kind of want more of from this era of Star Wars is like big permanent changes to things that we know, not necessarily just giving us what we know in the exact same way we know it, but taking what we know and evolving it and changing it. And I think bringing water to Tatooine would be such a major shift to that planet that it would be really fun to see how they work that into Star Wars lore from here on out.
Yeah, the one thing I want from like Star Wars, like what you were saying with changing lore and stuff, is just to change how I view scenes I've seen a million times. Like I'm never gonna be after this show and even Mandalorian a little bit. I'm never gonna be able to watch Anakin slaughtering the Tuscans the same way again.
Yeah, this show did a great job enhancing the Tuscans. That they were very much characters that feel like racial stereotypes and were
Yeah,
racial stereotypes, and they could have easily just kind of dismissed them or ignored them or put them in a box. And I think it was a good choice to develop them a bit here and give them some more complexity. It was not at all what I thought I would get out of this show, but I'll take it.
yeah, it was kind of interesting because like Star Wars is all about taking these storylines and like tropes that we all know and putting a Star Wars spin on it, and they kind of took that Avatar, Fern Gully, Dances with Wolves, trope and put it on its head because it's like, okay, these indigenous people, but now our quote unquote white savior is going to be like an actor that has indigenous ancestry,
Hmm.
and it's all just kind of flipping it on its head and doing it in a kind of a different way.
Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot, and like you said, you're gonna go back and watch all of the Star Wars movies where Tuscan shows up, and you're gonna think, oh, it's more interesting now because I actually like
Yeah.
see the variety of these cultures. It's not just like a one note of the raiders
Yeah.
and they rape and they pillage and they torture people for fun. And
Yeah.
that's kind of like very one note for a character. And Star Wars is never about one notes. You know,
Yeah.
it's about how everybody's capable of good, everybody's capable of great evil. And I think it's to the theme of Star Wars. Luke's just some random guy, and then a farmer on Tatooine becomes like the savior of the universe. So who knows? Do you get a Tusken Raider, a Tusken that you put into the corner of like just this Raider who kills could be the one that saves the universe. You never know how things go in the Star Wars world.
Yeah. The one thing I'm interesting too is we saw the Tuskens, or we saw like the Tusken village wiped out. We saw the chief's body. We saw um the kid that he was with. We saw him throw his Boba Fett throw the kid's stick on the pyre, but we didn't see anything from the warrior. So I'm curious if maybe the warrior lived and survived somehow, and they'll be back. Uh,
Interesting.
but I mean, I could have just missed it. I've watched it twice, and the second time I specifically was like looking for anything from the warrior, and like nothing really stuck out. So
We'll see how it goes. It'll be interesting. I mean, how much do we have left now?
4 episodes.
4 episodes. We're nearly halfway.
Yeah.
And each because we're getting to that midpoint, so this will be their chance to really like kick the drama up a bit.
Yeah.
You get to that halfway point, and that's the point where you want to like throw in a twist. Throw in a little bit of a wrench to what you think is going to happen, and it could be Crimson Dawn, it could be anything else. And I am looking forward to seeing how they can elevate this. And I haven't been super into these first couple episodes, but I've liked them enough that I'm willing to stick it out and see where it goes from here.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to say about Boba Fett before we move on to our next topic?
That's all I got, Joe.
All right, so a movie that was released in theaters a few months ago. You and I both saw it in theaters, but now it dropped on Disney Plus, and that is Marvel's The Eternals. Basically, a group of people were created and have lived on this planet for thousands of years, but we're told that they can't intervene because their sole mission is basically to defeat the deviants if any deviants show up on Earth. And yeah, they're basically, spoiler alert, learn that their job is to essentially let humanity grow to a certain point, and so that a celestial can be born from Earth and the life on Earth and destroy all of humanity, and that kind of leads to some conflict because the people that knew the mission are like, we got to continue the mission. People that didn't know the mission are like, we can't let this happen. So yeah, what was your general thoughts on Eternals? Have you watched it on Disney Plus? Have you watched it since you watched it in theaters?
Yeah, I'm excited for this one because I know we are kind of on opposing sides of this movie here because I was a huge fan of it. It's not my favorite Marvel movie, but it's certainly in the top echelon, I would say, of the good ones. I thought it was gorgeous. I thought you mentioned the conflict of these characters, and they faced with this ultimatum that changes their worldview and changes how they see themselves within the world. And I thought that was a really fascinating take on these characters. And superheroes can often be elevated to like these larger than life characters who don't really have any relatable problems and are just kind of cool, especially in the Marvel universe. It's like they're there to be fun and they're there to be cool and they have some complexity, but you're not really like thinking about the deep morals of what Iron Man is doing. You're just like, oh, it's cool because it's Tony Stark and he has this growth as a character. And I thought this was really fascinating to watch, and I was really into a lot of the characters. I think there are some pacing problems because they have a very large cast, and none of them have been established at all in any movies before this. So they had to do a lot of heavy lifting to get these characters in our minds and make us care about them. But for me, it did work. I felt invested, and like you said, when that conflict comes of what side do they pick and where do they go from here, I was very emotionally attached to it. It was one of those movies where the emotions kind of outweighed the plot in some way, where I was very invested in the themes and the emotions of the characters. And there are things you can point to in the plot that kind of start to fall apart a little bit. But for me, it was a gorgeous enough movie and a thematically compelling enough movie that I could look past some of the flaws that people were talking about. And yeah, I had a really good time with this. I rewatched it on Disney Plus because they have the IMAX scenes put in, the IMAX ratio. So I was curious to check that out, and it looks real good at IMAX. So I'm happy for Disney Plus for putting that IMAX ratio on there, despite some of the feedback from the directors. I like that the option is there for people who want it.
No. Yeah, for me, It was solid. It was good. I think I've only seen it the one time. I have to watch it again before I can rank it amongst the other MCU movies because I don't think it's necessarily fair to rank a movie you've seen once alongside movies you've seen four, five, six times. Um, but yeah, I don't remember if I talked about it on air or off air or when, but I think my major problem with this movie is they couldn't find the right balance between being a movie about Gemma Chan's character and being an ensemble movie, and it just felt like it was never enough about Gemma Chan's character to make me feel invested about her, but it wasn't enough about the main, the overall ensemble cast as a whole to make me feel invested in any of them outside of her character. And so it was just kind of this weird middle ground that I don't think it just ever, for me, didn't ever find that balance of like, okay, are we about Gemma Chan's character or are we an ensemble movie? Because I could never figure it out, and it was never one way enough for me to care.
Yeah, I think that's something that's going to turn people. It's going to be what makes or breaks you. I think is the characters and whether or not you buy into them. And
Mm-hmm.
the fact that they're all new characters makes it hard, especially in Marvel that kind of thrives on its repeating characters and like the characters you've built up for 10 years of caring about. That you're seeing them each entry, going through stuff that you've pre-invested in these characters. And for me, it was additionally exciting that I didn't know any of these characters. It was fun to go in. I knew nothing about the Eternals. Like I knew their basic who they were and their power sets, and that's pretty much it. Like I knew who they were as characters, but I didn't know anything about their stories or anything like that. So it was really refreshing for a Marvel movie to go in and be like, I know nothing because I never had the courage to delve into the cosmic side of Marvel Comics. It was way too out of there for me.
Yep.
So yeah, if you think the movie Eternals is crazy and confusing and has a lot of wild sci-fi space stuff, like the comics are way above the it's you talk about crazy cosmic, like that's gonna go crazy cosmic. And Marvel is starting their cosmic era. They had that sprinkled in with Guardians and Thor Ragnarok, but they're really going into the cosmic side of things this round between Doctor Strange and Ant-Man, Quantumania. Those are all going pretty cosmic, so it's going to be, of course, Guardians 3. So yeah, this will be one that'll be interesting to look back on in a few years and see how people feel about it. But I'm glad it's on Disney Plus, and I've been seeing people who didn't watch it in theaters because of the health situation of the world and things like that, so they didn't feel safe going into the theater. Now I think it's exciting they finally get a chance to watch it, and I've been seeing a lot of positive feedback. So I could see this being one where it got a bit of hate when it came out, but maybe people will look back on it and see the virtues that it was going for more so than the faults that it fell into.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it could be somewhat more divisive, a lot more divisive than most Marvel movies. I feel like there's definitely going to be people that love it and people like me that are just like, it wasn't for me. Where I feel like most Marvel movies are. I feel like Eternals, the ceiling on it for certain people is going to be higher than most other Marvel movies. Uh, because I feel like for the most part, like everyone's gonna walk out of a Marvel movie and being like, "Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed it," and like that's kind of it. But I feel like this one at least has a higher ceiling for certain people, but other people could walk out of this and just be like, "Yeah, no, I don't care."
Yeah, I think it's very possible that if you've gotten a little bit jaded by the Marvel universe and you want something that feels and looks different than the rest of the Marvel universe,
Uh,
this could be one that kind of draws you in a little bit more. But
yeah,
I do think if you're not a superhero person, if you're entirely sick of these like powerful people and their superpowers, there's laser eyes in this, and there's like demon dogs they fight in this. It very much is still a superhero movie. So I
yeah,
think if you're completely hating superhero stuff, it might not turn you over. But I think if you have an interest in Chloe Zhao's work after Nomadland or the writer, and you like her work and you want to see what she did with this big budget action movie, it's interesting to see what she brought to it. And you have that clash of this artsy indie director coming into like a huge studio blockbuster. So there's like a lot of weird choices, but yeah, I like that it made weird choices. And you said that Marvel movies do tend to kind of aim for the largest spread possible. They want to have that buck wild widespread blast that hits about everyone they possibly can hit. And it was refreshing to see them be like, okay, we're going to go for like a specific demographic here, even if it did not necessarily work out for them in the end.
yeah,
It was cool to see them try it once and maybe never try it again because this one didn't go so well for them
yeah,
financially or critically.
yeah. All right, you ready to move on to our next topic?
I'm ready.
All right, so we got some news that dropped basically Friday today, depending on when you're watching or listening. That Disney Plus is making a continuation of the Santa Claus franchise via a limited series Disney Plus show. Now, limited series is always questionable of what it means to some studios. Limited series means, hey, we're gonna do 6 episodes and that's it. We're not doing a season two. It's just this. Other studios consider a limited series to essentially just be like, hey, we're gonna do 5 seasons, but they're all gonna be 6 episodes. So who really knows what this means? Based on the storyline that they've said this is gonna be, I imagine it's just gonna be a season one. They said Scott Calvin is 65 years old. He has 2 kids that have essentially grown up on the North Pole. So if you watched the Santa Claus 3, he had one kid that was born. So I imagine that Scott Calvin technically is going to have 3 kids. Charlie, who's a grown adult out living in the world, living his life. And then we have the kid that was born at the end of Santa Claus 3, and another kid born after the fact, and that essentially those 2 kids never really left the North Pole. He's kind of deciding he wants to retire from Santa and reintroduce his kids back into real life in the real
Hmm.
world, which I can't imagine is anything you're really going to get 2, 3 seasons out of. So I definitely think this is going to be a 1 season, 7 episode, 8 episode thing. But I'm also questioning potentially, is this going to be a thing where they kind of have a fake time jump, where they pretend more time has passed than actually has passed, and the one of his kids that was raised on, even though the last movie came out in 2006, so technically they should only be about 15. If his kid's like 20, and the whole plot, I guess, is him also looking for the next Santa. So I'm curious if they're going to do a thing where he has like a 20-year-old kid, and that kid ends up like, oh, I'm looking for my next Santa with my kids, and then at the end he's like, oh, my kid is the one that should be Santa, and do
It should be
that.
probably Anna Kendrick.
Yeah, and do like that whole thing, and then that season two is like that kid being Santa, and but who knows? It's nothing I'm like jumping for joy, like hell yeah, more Santa Claus. But as someone who watched the Santa Claus trilogy this Christmas, the first one to me is a good movie. I think you could consider it a Christmas classic, one you gather the family around. 2 is solid, doesn't really taint the legacy of the first one. It's not as good, but it's not bad. The third one's just not good. The whole Martin Short, Jack Frost thing is not great. But Tristan, what's your thoughts on this news?
Yeah, I mean, you say the Santa Claus trilogy, that almost made me laugh because I'm like, oh, I guess so. They made 3 of
It
them.
is. It's a trilogy, man.
Yeah, I had some great memories of the first Santa Claus. I mean, I think we grew up in the perfect era when it dropped. So,
Yeah.
like that was definitely one that I watched a lot when I was a kid. It was a Christmas staple, and Tim Allen. I watched Home Improvement a lot when I was a kid, so it was like, oh, you get the guy from Home Improvement, Santa, in this in the movie. So I liked to watch that a lot, and it was one of my aunt's favorite movies too. So we watched a lot as a family. So that's definitely one that I have a lot of memories for. And yeah, I'll be watching this for sure. It sounds pleasant. It sounds like a nice, like enjoyable Christmas romp. And family fun. Santa Claus is back. The family's back. I'm sure we're gonna get, some cameos from the series and things like that. And we're gonna
Yeah,
get
yeah, I was gonna bring that up. One of the sad things about it, though, is you had the actor that played. Like one of my favorite aspects of this franchise was all of the other like mythical characters, like Father Time and Mother Nature and the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny and those type of characters. But Peter Boyle, who played Father Time, has since passed. Art LaFleur, who played the Tooth Fairy, has recently passed away as well. So I'm curious if they're just going to bring in other actors and they're kind of just going to imply that the same thing that happens with Santa Claus happens with the other characters too, of like the characters retire and other ones replace them. I think it would be hilarious if they brought in The Rock as the Tooth Fairy.
that would be really good. That's a good call. I think that would be hilarious. And I do like that idea of they're also passed the mantle on. So he's kind of like the last one left who hasn't done it. Maybe he's like
Yeah,
holding on to the
yeah,
to the name Santa Claus too long, and they're like, "Look, man, you gotta give it up. It's time."
yeah.
So I can see it, and there could be some fun jokes where like Tim Allen's what like 65 in this, you said. So maybe the new Tooth Fairy is like Selena Gomez, and it's like a young actress, and it's like much different era of generation clash than Tim Allen is. So he kind of feels like he's being replaced by
All
like
right.
the new generation of people.
All right, we're 34 minutes into this recording and we have one topic left, so I'm throwing a curveball. Let's recast the mythical characters right now.
Oh, I love it, Joe.
All right, so in the first two, well, this 2 and 3, Mother Nature was originally played by Aisha Tyler, who people might know as the second host of Whose Line Is It Anyway? She's also one of the voices of the main characters in Archer. My pick for the new Mother Nature, if you want to go young for everybody, is Zendaya.
That's a really good poll. I think, yeah, they're gonna probably go young with that. I think Zendaya is a good pick. Who would I go with for Mother Nature? See, because I do feel like we could get. See, I just watched Scream, so my mind goes, oh, Courtney Cox. My mind goes, Jenny. I started going through the whole cast of Scream right now, and
Yeah,
I'm like, well, that doesn't really fit.
yeah,
I'm on a Scream kick for a
yeah.
couple of days, but yeah, I do think we're gonna go for some younger people. Zendaya is a good pick. I don't know how you beat Zendaya.
Yeah.
Like that's you put
Zendaya's
Zendaya
like,
in
yeah,
anything, and I'm
yeah,
watching it.
yeah,
I watch Malcolm and Marie.
yeah.
I got no standards.
Was it really that bad?
I have a ranking of my 2021 movies, and it was a nice solid bottom theater down there. Not
Alright,
quite the bottom, but in
alright,
the tier down there.
alright. Like, are we gonna beat the Rock? Anyone is gonna beat the Rock as the Tooth Fairy of like? I'm sure like some other actors could give a number one. It's the Tooth Fairy in the Santa Claus TV show, so like we're not coming for a great performance, but just the Rock showing up, and we're now saying that that movie is in the same universe as the Santa Claus movies. I don't think we beat like the shock. Everyone on Twitter going crazy if the Rock shows up as the Tooth Fairy, right?
I think people lose their minds, and that's like the one thing that gets people in. It's
Yeah,
like, what the heck? The Rock is back as the Tooth Fairy.
yeah,
I think it would be fun. I think Look, if I think it would be fun to get into the Disney Plus, the Disney Vault, bring out Emma Stone to be your Mother Nature. That's not necessarily young, but
mm,
she's a big name and she's in the
yeah.
Disney payroll, so it could be fun. You're not thinking she's gonna be a main character necessarily, but it
No,
could be
yeah,
like, oh,
like
she
she's
shows
in
up for
like
like a scene.
yeah, I think these characters they all show up in the first episode and like the last episode.
That's a good
Yeah.
call.
So to me, if you got the Rock as the Easter Bunny, or not the Easter Bunny, the Rock as the Tooth Fairy, I think as the Easter Bunny, if you got the Rock there, you got to bring in Kevin Hart.
Kevin Hart as Easter Bunny is a really good pick.
Yeah, especially number one, he was the voice of the rabbit in The Secret Life of Pets. He's small, so it's funny. He was replacing or Kevin Hart as Cupid, because I believe it was Kevin Pollak was Cupid in the original movies.
You know who I think would make a good Cupid is Mark Strong. He's got the
Oh
bald
yeah,
head. I
yeah,
think he'd be really funny. He'd be able to be very hyper serious about it.
yeah,
I think that he would add to that because
yeah,
he'd be able to play it really straight.
yeah,
And yet the fact that he's like wearing a wings and a bow, I think it would be pretty funny. Yeah, I lead into that.
yeah. All right, who are we casting as Father Time? I feel like we have to like this has to be the youngest person because that's almost more hilarious that they're replacing Peter Boyle as Father Time.
Yeah, you want to go with like a kid, right?
Yeah. Oh,
So I
what's his face? The kid that was in everything for like the last 4 or 5 years, Jacob Tremblay as Father Time.
Jacob Tremblay, that's a good call. I'm trying to remember. I could not pull it off the top of my head for the life of me, but the guy who plays number five, the young kid in Umbrella Academy, I think he would be a really cool
Okay.
Father Time. He plays kind of like this time traveling. Uh, he's a he has time travel, but he's stuck in like the body of a kid. So even though he's a grown adult, he still looks like he did when he was like 12 or whatever, however old the actor is. So
Yeah.
I thought it was a fun role for him, and that stood out to me as like a young actor who uh, could pull that off pretty well. The kid from
Aiden Gallagher is his name according to Google.
Aiden Gallagher. That could be right. Who knows? I was thinking the kid from the Taika Waititi Hitler movie.
Oh, the kid that wasn't in Home Sweet Home Alone.
Yes.
Yeah. I like that kid. That kid as Father Time would be funny. Any kid as Father Time is funny. Like this is the Santa Claus TV show. We're not trying to be serious here. We're just going for what gets the funniest reaction.
Yeah, I think that's good. You could bring in cameos. You could have Tom Holland as
Okay.
Father Time.
You want people? Yeah, I was thinking that. I almost thinking Harry Styles as Father Time.
That's a good one. He's hot.
Mm.
He's a Disney. He's on the Disney payroll.
Yep,
Speaking of
he's
it,
playing Arrow so now in the
I feel
MCU.
like I was gonna not spoil it, and then you just spoiled it. So I
If
was right
my,
about to
my
say.
thing
Speaking
with
of Turtles,
spoilers is now that it's my thing with spoilers, especially for like big franchise movies like that, if you cared enough about it to not want to be spoiled, you would have watched it by now.
that's true. We are in a unique time where I'm trying to play a little later on spoilers than I normally would. But yeah, that could be fun. Harry Styles, he's up and coming. He's got a lot of, not up and coming as a music artist, but as an actor, he's
Yeah,
really got a lot
yeah,
coming out. So yeah, why not? Harry Styles, Father Time. I like it.
yep. All right. And but because it's the showrunner of Last Man Standing, it's going to be the showrunner of this. I imagine it's just going to be half the cast of Last Man Standing. So expect Hector Elizondo as Father Time or something.
Yeah, that's the thing that holds me back from being super hyped for this. Is like if they had a really great writer attached, or like a great comedy director, or like something that
Yeah,
someone who ran a show that wasn't like mediocre at best, I
yeah,
would be I would be more into it. But yeah, man, not a great, not a terrible show or anything, but not one where I'm like, oh, I gotta
yeah,
see more from that guy.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's like one of those things of like, whatever. I don't know. I don't know what name out there would make me. Maybe like I can't remember his name, but the guy that was the creator of The Good Place and Parks and Rec, someone like him. If they were like, oh, he's the guy gonna be behind this, I'm like, okay, I'm into this more.
Yeah, they pulled from a show that I was more invested in than Tim Allen, like desperately trying to hold
Mm,
his career
yeah,
alive for a couple of years in the
mm,
heat of his troubles.
yeah. All right. Anything else you got to say about the Santa Claus before we move on to our final topic?
I, Look, it'll be a great. I assume it's going to drop Christmas time.
Yeah,
You know,
it'll
that would be
probably be
weird
like
if it didn't.
maybe. I assume it'll start like Thanksgiving, like the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, maybe.
It'll be great. I'll be in full costume every week, Joe.
Yeah.
You got to get ready. The hat
What's
is
our
just a
what's?
teaser.
I don't think they said. What's our guess? Are we saying Christmas 2022 or Christmas 2023? Because
It's
it's like a weird time. Because unless this has been worked on for a while and they're just about to go into production, I can't imagine like that they'd be done for Christmas 2022.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think 2023 is probably the best bet. I mean, they haven't even announced a cast. Yeah, unless they've been doing it behind the scenes for a bit, hiding
Yeah,
it or
unless this
something.
is
But
like
like,
one of those things where like it hasn't been rumored or leaked because no one really cares that much, and it's like, oh, we only told you about this because we're starting shooting next week. I don't, I don't see how they get this done for Christmas 2022.
yeah, I'm curious to see how that goes because yeah, with the world in the state that it is, it takes even longer to film stuff. And
But maybe when they say limited series, this thing's gonna be like 3 hour long episodes or something, and it's like, okay, yeah, I can understand why that would be done by 2022.
you know what they got to do is 3 episodes that are like 3.5 hours long,
Yeah.
and release them like each day back to back instead of just making it convenient. You're gonna
It's
release it
it's gonna be
all
in
like
real
one day, one
time.
day, one day.
Yeah, it's gonna be in real time.
That's how you got to do it. Real time. It's Tim Allen's entire life.
Yeah.
You gotta watch
It
65
says
years worth of footage.
Yeah, it's his last week. It's like a Peter Jackson Get Back style thing of his last week as Santa Claus.
That'd be awesome.
Yep.
You know, he's sitting in the North Pole studio improvising his his Santa Claus lines, trying to
Mm,
figure out how to pitch to the next Santa Claus. I like it.
yep. All right. So, okay, based on the premise that we know, taking final bets, is the person taking over as Santa Claus one of his children? Whether it's Charlie or like the two that haven't, we don't really know yet. I think, to me, if you're not doing anything else with this franchise after that, Charlie has to be the next Santa Claus.
I think. I mean, it's a good not to end the franchise on. You know, he's been part of the franchise from the beginning. Is Charlie? So it could be a nice arc for the character. I don't remember how he goes about change through that. I know he's older in the third one.
Yeah, he's kind of like a dick in the second one, and then he really doesn't have a whole lot to do in the third one. But like, the kid never really went. But it's the same actor throughout, so I think it'd be weird. I'd be kind of annoyed if they recast it, and if they were like, "Oh, Paul Rudd is Charlie," I'd be like, "No, just bring back the kid again." It's a Disney Plus show. We're not asking for like the greatest of acting here. He
my
was fine in
prediction.
the others, Just let him come back and be Santa if that's how it ends.
My prediction is maybe it's a bit of a twist on that. Like he wants Charlie to be Santa. He's assumed that Charlie's going to take on the mantle, and then he kind of finds out that Charlie has no interest in being Santa at all. You know,
Yeah.
and like he has an arc of like learning that he can't force his will on his children. You know, especially his adult children,
Yeah.
and he has to let them grow up. And I could see it. He hands it off maybe to like a younger daughter or something like that. Someone he underestimated a bit and said, "Oh, she's like." You know, I wanted it to be Charlie, and I've been overlooking my youngest daughter this whole time. That
Yeah.
is a perfectly good fit for Santa, and
Yeah.
it could be nice,
That's probably
aggressive
what they're gonna
without
do.
offending Tim Allen. You know, you can bring in a daughter and be like, oh, he kind of dismisses her in the role, and then says, oh, look, she proved herself to be Santa. You take the Noel plot, but you just put Tim Allen in there, and you make it a little bit better than Noel was. I hope.
So they're just gonna make bring. So it's the same showrunner. We bring in Caitlin Dever as his daughter. You know, she already knows how to play Tim Allen's daughter. So boom, there we go.
Yeah, I like that. Caitlin Dever, great pick, great pull from that show because
Oh,
like she had a good career after that. You
oh,
know, she's a compelling actress, so I'd go for it.
all right. So our next topic. So I believe what I can't even remember the name of the movie. The Pixar movie, Red something, Red
Turning
Notice,
Red.
Turning Red. There we go. Not Red Notice. That's the Rock.
That
You know, that's the Netflix
truly
thing
a
that no one
classic
that's not going
of
to
all
exist
time.
any. So anyway, Turning Red, a movie that basically sounds like Pixar's version of the Hulk, of this girl anytime that she experiences like extreme emotion turns into a giant red panda, which was going to get a theatrical release and is now going to be straight to Disney Plus, which I believe has happened to the last two previous Pixar movies, mainly because of the pandemic. I think this is mostly a financial move because the animated movies have not been doing very well in the theaters recently.
Hmm.
Sing 2 did okay, but nowhere near as much as the first one. And Amazon has already pushed Hotel Transylvania 4, which I thought was a pretty decently successful franchise. It's moved that from theater straight to streaming. So I think while the live action movies are doing relatively okay in theaters, I think studios are noticing that the animated movies are not so much still. So I think that's probably the main reason behind the move. Kind of sucks for Pixar, but hopefully we'll crest and move beyond the pandemic, and the next Pixar movie can be a straight to theater movie.
I really hope so because it's a curious decision. Because when you look at the year of box office, the movies that stood the test of the pandemic were family films. You know, and I think Turning Red had a good shot of being that one that like brought the families out and was able to kind of have the legs that stuck out for a little bit. And I wonder what their thought process was. I would love to be able to talk to like Bob Chapek and be like, so what was the thought process of taking Turning Red off of theaters? And it, I'll focus on the positives real quick because I do think, of course, there's a danger of going to theaters right now, and it's not a great not a great move. I think to be telling people you have to go to the theater to see a movie. I'm normally a person who's saying, "Oh, you should see it in the theater because it's the best visual audio experience. You're never going to match that at home, no matter how good your setup is. You're just never going to." And I think that's still true. But like, I'm not going to die to go see Turning Red.
Yeah,
You know, like I love movies, but I've been avoiding the theater myself, and it's a time where I feel like it just makes sense to be dropping things.
yeah,
I don't think it's a I don't I mean putting it out for free on a streaming platform and saying it's not in theaters at all is a weird chant as a weird pull. Like I think their best move would have been it's in theaters and it's also a paid video on demand.
yeah.
But so that could be a good. But of course, I don't know if their
I
thirty
don't think
dollar
that
price tag
worked.
is doing well for
I
them.
don't think that worked because I don't think they've done it since Black Widow.
And it's weird because it seems like it's working for like every other studio that
Uh,
isn't them. Like when other studios release stuff on iTunes day and date with theaters, they do make a good amount of money off of those releases, and
uh,
it's I think releasing it to Disney Plus and then charging $30 would be a bad move. But I think if they said, "Hey, it's in theaters," and or you could also do like the $20 typical on demand,
yeah.
that would make them a good amount of money. But in the end, they want to draw people to Disney Plus, and
Uh,
that's their end goal. I think Disney Plus has
yeah, I was
pivoted,
gonna
or
say.
Disney as a company has pivoted to like they don't care about maintaining AMC theaters or like Regal. You know, they want to maintain their own company and their own platform,
Yeah,
and now they see an opportunity to cut out that middleman very quickly. I know theaters are not happy about this. I've heard from multiple like managers of theaters across the country that they're really upset about this, especially because of the somewhat late notice. Like they were promoting this heavily in all their movies. Disney had a mandate that they had to show Turning Red in front of a lot of movies, the trailer for it. And it does feel like a slap in the face to be like, okay, thanks for marketing our movie for a year. Now we're not going to let you make any money off of
Yeah.
it. It's just, it feels very cold. And I know a
Yeah.
lot of theaters have had some discourse with Warner Brothers over similar choices, and Universal too had some, especially early on, they had a bit of a conflict with theaters. And I do wonder if this comes to a head sooner than later, especially as these variants continue to drag things out and make this last a lot longer than it should. It's a shame to see Pixar go from every movie they release is guaranteed to at least get nominated for an Oscar, if not win every single time. Like whenever a Pixar movie is in the running, we just kind of assume, oh well, that's probably going to win the animated film Oscar, right? And to go from
Yeah.
that to like making TV movies is kind of a fall,
Yeah.
a pretty rough fall.
Yeah. It'll be curious though if they do the whole like, oh, New York and LA theater release to still make it eligible and then it still wins. But maybe the movie just fucking sucks. Like maybe Pixar just dropped the ball. Well, it'll come out on Disney Plus. You and I watch it and we're like, oh, this movie sucks. Like no wonder they dropped this on Disney Plus. God damn.
It's very possible. The director, of course, is not
Isn't it the director of
experienced.
Bow?
It is the director of Bao, so she has a good short
Yeah.
film up, but this is
Yeah.
her first feature, so you never know. I mean, it could fall apart in the feature length. That
Yeah.
that does happen sometimes, and Pixar has not quite been on their A game in the last few movies. They've put out some solid stuff, but none of it's like all time classic Pixar movies. So you wonder if Pixar, once the staple of animation, once the household name of animation, might start to kind of
Yeah.
fade off and to be just like another Disney name.
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah, like it's kind of weird to me how after they bought Pixar, they were still doing like Walt Disney Animation Studios. Like, I don't know, didn't really make sense to me. Why wouldn't you just stick your bigger? I feel like at that point, Pixar was a bigger name brand than Walt Disney Animation Studios.
Well, at that point, Pixar still had like a quality control
Yeah,
where it was like you know what you're getting from a Pixar movie, you know what you're getting from a
yeah.
Disney
Once,
Animation
but
Studios
once we
movie.
got
It's
to
not the same
Cars
thing, you
3,
know.
then it was just kind of like,
Like Moana is a Disney animated movie. Not I don't think it necessarily is a Pixar movie.
that's
And
true. Yeah,
I just don't. I really don't want to see Pixar fall. We talk about a studio that was so fun. We've talked about Star Wars for how long this episode, and Pixar is like doesn't exist without Star Wars. It's kind of like a
yeah,
rippling effect of George Lucas
yeah,
still in the film industry, and it'd be a shame to see that become like this nothing studio.
mm, yeah.
I don't think that's what's going to happen. I hope not, and I hope that it's just a fluke of the world health
Yeah, I think it
crisis.
was more just like you know everything spiking and animation movies still not being able to recover. But I think hopefully when. But I also wonder partially if like I mean, Netflix and streaming and all these have, changed the way we consume media. Where I can understand a lot of parents like being like, "Why am I gonna take my unruly kids to see a movie in the theater when I could watch any animated movie that's ever been released at my house for free with a touch of a button?"
Yeah, I mean the way we consume media has completely changed in the last 2 years. It was a long time coming. Streaming
Yeah,
changed it gradually. It was like this little drip in the water that
mm,
people said, "Oh, it's just Netflix," and then suddenly it was growing and growing and growing and kind of like polluted the whole thing. And this COVID stuff really elevated that and
yeah,
exaggerated it, and I think took us a decade into the future in
yeah.
a year's time.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that as well. It's something I've thought even before the pandemic that there's going to be a point where theaters, are basically like the mid-budget and the small-budget movies are going to be on like various streaming platforms, but you're really only going to go to the theater for your big-budget Star Wars, Marvel, DC, even your Dune type movies that you
Like
know you're not going to see movies open to anything under like 120 130 million dollars. And maybe you'll still have your niche theaters where like you got to drive 20 30 miles to find, to watch your licorice pizza or whatever. But I think for the most part the general audience has shown again and again for the last 4 or 5 years that they just don't care about like these mid-budget smaller movies.
It's a shame. I mean, you say that and I want to cry, Joe. I don't want to
Mm,
see the theaters go away, and I think the theaters are a great place to expose
mm,
people to step outside of their comfort
yeah,
zone and stuff they otherwise wouldn't see. And
yeah. But also,
I would hate to
uh,
see it all turn into content. I just I don't want it all to be like stuff that I just inject
yeah,
into my veins and my cell phone every
yeah.
day.
One of the thing I was thinking about this yesterday too, like, is everything ebbs and flows and moves in cycles, and it's like, okay, with like these big spectacle movies, we're now at a point where we've gone like full meta in a way, like with Spider-Man No Way Home, and like referencing things, like directly referencing previous versions and stuff like that. Is there a point where people just get burnt out, like with the MCU? Like, there's gonna be a time where people just don't care about it anymore. Like, I don't see a situation where Kevin Feige is like just released 4 MCU movies the previous year, and he's like, "We finished it. We've completed. The MCU's over." There's gonna be a point where interest dwindles, and they go from 4 movies a year to 3 movies a year to 2 movies a year to 1 movie every other year to like 1 movie every 3 years. And it's just gonna kind of go out with a whimper, and we're gonna be like, "Oh, I think the MCU's like done. There hasn't been one in like 4 or 5 years."
I wonder what the future holds. I wonder if it'll be like beyond our time in decades from now, or if it's going to be,
Yeah,
10 years from now, and we're still kicking, making this podcast talking about the death of the MCU. And
yeah,
I don't know. I think we are hitting a point where some of the general audience does not want to watch all of this nostalgic,
yeah,
like, you got to watch 16 Spider-Man movies to understand this new
yeah,
one type of stuff. And
yeah,
I know people who are not hyper invested into comic book stuff and they heard about Spider-Man, they went and saw it and they're like, it was all right. I liked when I saw the other guys, I guess, but like, I think we're gonna hit a point where only the super fans go and see this stuff, and Marvel has to get to a point where the super fans are a big enough demographic, and the movies are cheaply made enough that
yeah.
they can make that work. And I think when you look at the Spider-Man numbers, it's like, I wonder if that's the point we're at. I wonder if Marvel doesn't care about appealing to like the the people who are disenchanted by it because they already have enough people who are enthralled by it that they're like, who cares?
Yep. Yeah, when you in the kind of, I don't want to say the middle of the pandemic, hopefully, but like
Jeez.
at point of, at some point you're during a pandemic and you had the fifth highest domestic opening of all time,
Yeah, I mean,
and
it's
the third
obvious
movie
people
in a,
made a
well, like the third movie of a franchise, I guess, with Spider-Man No Way Home.
people made a point to see it.
Yeah,
You can tell that people are willing to go to theaters and see those kind of tentpole movies. I imagine Doctor Strange makes insane money, and Spider Verse 2 makes insane money. Like, I think that these tentpole movies are going to make lots of money, and what that means for everything else, I shudder to think.
yeah. It makes me question of like, okay, is this a one-time thing with No Way Home and Doctor Strange and all of these crossover things, or are we gonna have a situation where like, I'm trying to think of an example of like a movie based, okay, like even so they're doing the Equalizer 3 starring Denzel Washington. Is like, are they gonna try to fit Queen Latifah in there of like her Equalizer character, and basically say like, oh, these two Equalizers exist in this, that are both based on the TV show from like the 80s or the 70s or whenever it was. But are they gonna have like that crossover to get like the Queen Latifah TV show fans to watch the new Denzel movie or stuff like that? Or is like like the week the movie comes out, is Denzel going to appear on that episode of The Equalizer as his Equalizer character? Like, are we going to get more of these kind of crossover events, between like different iterations of stuff that have happened?
I definitely think that's what's going to happen. You look at the way that The Force Awakens created in a way like this legacy character era, where it's like we're gonna do like the requel and bring back the legacy characters, and we're gonna like pay tribute to this larger franchise. And
Yeah,
Force Awakens came out, made insane money, and then all of a sudden every studio was like, let's do the legacy stuff. Let's
yeah,
bring back our characters. Let's do Ghostbusters.
yeah,
Let's do this and that. And I think we could see the rippling effects of Spider-Man there too. I do think we'll see some kind of fun crossover stuff and some terrible crossover stuff in the
oh
future
yeah, I
from
can't wait
studios.
for that, the badness to happen. I can't even think of like what's like a franchise that's just like has those previous iterations that are just like not for this or like not meant. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I can't wait to see it. Nothing gives me more joy than watching like a dumpster fire movie where it's like everyone's firing it wrong.
yeah,
So I'm ready for that. Give me some bombs. Give me the multiverse version of God. I can't even think of a franchise that's so dull that I wouldn't want that. But
Chuck
yeah,
Norris showing up on the CW version of Walker Texas Ranger as his
wait,
version of Chuck Norris.
yeah, you bring a Lethal Weapon, well, 4, and you bring in the cast of the Lethal Weapon TV show, the guy that got canceled for some reason or
Oh
another, and
yeah, yeah.
and the other guy. It's like, who watched this show? Why are you bringing them into this? And it's like, I feel like, and you think of the Queen Latifah showing up in Equalizer. It's like, did people watch that show? I don't think so, but
No, I don't
that would
know
be the
anyone.
kind of thing where it's like, oh, they're pulling some random. No one watched this, and yet we got to tribute it. And
Yeah, yeah. Power Rangers is prime for it. I think they actually did it, but
yeah,
already.
Power Rangers, how many times they've crossed over? How many times?
Yeah.
I watched that as a kid. I saw them cross over. I saw all the Power Rangers in one battle scene, Joe. I saw them all do their power moves, all teaming up. It was a moment I came alive as a child. It
I'm
was a
sure you
moment that
did.
I realized that hope is real.
I'm sure you did.
I'm chasing that high ever since. The Avengers are nothing compared to Power Rangers. Uh, yeah, talk about shaping my dumb taste.
Yeah. I was just like looking at my movie list, seeing if like any movies or any franchise stuck out of like that have had multiple iterations that you could bring back. Like Mission Impossible, but the TV show was so long ago, and like all of the people from the TV show are dead that you couldn't really bring them back for the movie.
Yeah, I'm curious how this will go. It's gonna be interesting to watch. I don't know if it'll be good or exciting, but I'll be able to. At least I got some alcohol to carry
Yeah.
me through the downfall of cinema.
Yep, I'm right there with you. All
Look, and
right.
we'll still be here every week covering Disney Plus though.
Yep.
So
Can't wait for
when they
Ryan
drop,
Reynolds' Green Lantern to appear in like a super serious, movie about race as like with starring uh, John David Washington as John Stewart.
do you think we get a James Bond multiverse? Do we ever see like Daniel Craig hanging out with the new Bond, hanging out with Pierce Brosnan?
I'm gonna say no. I think the only thing we could get is maybe Pierce Brosnan gets cast as like M or something, and he has like a reference to like maybe he used to be agent and like refers to something from one of his movies. Something
Mm-hmm.
like that. I don't see a situation. Or in like 20, 30 years, Daniel Craig gets cast as M or gets cast as like a Bond villain and makes a reference to one of his movies. I'm still fully on board with the theory that Sean Connery was originally written to be the groundskeeper in Skyfall.
I like it. And yeah, that's one where I think they could easily jump the shark if they wanted to. Like if the next couple of Bond movies start to not do so well, and they're like, oh, maybe we should bring back Daniel Craig. Maybe we should bring back somebody else. Oh God, watch that franchise plummet so quick when they start doing. Oh, I was Bond, and they start pointing at each other. You're Bond. No, I'm Bond, and they say, oh, what's your name? And they both say Bond, James
I'm not
Bond.
gonna lie, I would kind of be down if they were to be like in the next Bond is Pierce Brosnan, and it's still this his Bond. It's just like a continuation, but they do like an old man. They're like, we're gonna do like some John le Carre novel style Bond movies with Pierce Brosnan back as James Bond.
Hey, I'd be down for it. Doctor Who has brought back how many of their actors for like audio dramas and radio plays and crossovers, and Doctor Who is a blueprint for
Yep,
pop culture. It seems.
yep. No one can.
Going back to Turning Red though, I am excited for it, and
Yeah,
it'll
can't
drop
wait
on
for
Disney Plus.
Pixar's
So
The
I'll be
Hulk.
sitting here in my bedroom in my pajamas watching Turning Red.
Just like Walt Disney wanted.
It drops what March, right? March
I have no idea,
March
honestly.
11th. March 11th is a release date for Turning Red.
All
So
right.
we got a couple of months still, but it'll be a good one to watch. I was excited for it, and I'm still excited for it,
Yep.
even though it's going to be on my TV, not a bigger
My
screen.
my favorite animated movie of 2021 I saw on my television. So it is what it is. How many great classic movies? That's my thing. Of how many great classic movies have basically anyone only ever seen on their television.
Yeah, when I think of my favorite movies, like the top 10 are all movies that I watched on my DVD or VHS. Like when I watched Star Wars for the first time on like a grainy VHS tape, and I was fine with it.
Yeah, I like Godfather, great. Never seen it in a theater. That's just how it is. Die Hard, never seen it in a theater.
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
to do that next Christmas Eve. Like, you know how like a lot of theaters will do like, oh, you can rent out a theater. I want to be like, can I rent out this theater and watch Die Hard?
I'm sure you could. A lot of theater. I've seen a good amount of classics in the theaters, and they're super enhanced by the big screen. And
Yeah.
so
I want to see Hans
let's
Gruber fall on a theater screen.
whole theater erupts.
Yeah.
Cheer out loud moment.
Yep. All right. Anything else you want to talk about this week in Disney Plus before I close it down?
It was a good run, Joe. We managed to get a good run time out of not not a ton. You said a slow week, but I feel like we talked a bit about a lot of stuff, and I have one story to tell before we sign off here about the Santa Claus uh, and Christmas, because a couple of years ago, so me and my family do grab bags where we give each other lists because we have a very large family, so we don't buy for everyone. We just buy for like one person. And
Yeah.
I got normally it's a $50 budget, so you try and go on Amazon, and get it to be like exactly $49.99, like get your money's worth out of Christmas. And I got my aunt, and I got her list, and I pulled it out, and I looked at it, and the only thing on this list of max $50 was a DVD of Santa Claus 3. Only the third one, not even like the whole set. She was like, "I need a DVD of the third one. That's what I want." And I was like, "Okay, I'll spend $4." I feel bad. I don't know what else to buy you, but I'll deliver on the DVD of Santa Claus 3, I guess. I'll always remember that. I'll always think of that when I think of the Santa Claus and Santa Claus 3 in particular, because not a great movie, and I always wonder why. Why did you want that? Why was it the only thing you wanted? The thoughts still run through my head.
Yeah. Your aunt's weird, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, man. All right. So without further ado, goodbye. And let me do this again. Without further ado, goodbye.
Hey, thank you for watching the Movie Change Up podcast. We'd really appreciate if you liked, commented, subscribed, and shared us with anyone you think might be into what we're doing over here. Thank you. Have a nice day.